What is going on, YouTube people? Today, we are going to go on a little bit of a deep dive into the TCG grading numbers. We look at this gem rate data every single month, and all we see is TCG, and it is this huge percentage of stuff. But what does that actually mean? Now, obviously, a large portion of it is Pokemon. But what I was curious about was, is the chase for the black labels and pristines real and the SGC Gold labels on these newer sets a thing? I hear about it, but what are the numbers behind it actually look like? Do you have a legitimate shot at a pristine or a black label on some of these newer TCGs, like One Piece, Dragon Ball are two examples? And then the other thing that I was interested in are any of the companies making a niche or grinding on a niche or a certain headway in a certain category. Like, for example, does one company get way more One Piece percentage of their TCG base than another? And what's the reasons behind that? So I reached out to my old friend Gemrate and said, Ryan, can you show me the first 4 months of TCG data broken down? And he said, give me a couple days and I gotcha. And he got me. So what you see here are 4 different tabs. We're going to look at each grading company. First up is PSA. This is January 1st through April 30th. So the first 4 months of the year. They have graded 1.9 million TCG cards. The bulk of that is Pokemon. 78% of their TCG base is Pokemon. One Piece is second place at 10%, just to show how big of market that TCG is carving out. That is their second most graded TCG. Now, it's a big gap. Pokemon was 1.5 million. One Piece was 200,000. And then after that, it kind of filters out between Lorcana, Dragon Ball, some Disney stuff, some other odds and ends. Yu-Gi-Oh's in there a little bit. But Pokemon and One Piece are the two heavy hitters. The next thing that I was curious about is the gem rate percentage on some of these sets. You can see, and I've heard that One Piece and Dragon Ball print extremely well, and they grade really clean. Dragon Ball Z is coming in at an 86% gem rate. One Piece is coming in at a 93% gem rate. For comparison's sake, another new TCG, Lorcana, hasn't been on the market very long, gems at a 64% rate. So you can see the difference in print quality there between those two. Now, Pokemon's down at 53%, but you have to remember, Pokemon, you are talking about a wide range of cards dating all the way back to the 90s and early 2000s. So you have a 20-some year base of cards to grade from. One Piece, that dates back to a year or two. So you don't have as wide of a berth there. So, it's going to skew towards the ultra modern stuff. But still, even a 53% gem rate is pretty good on the Pokemon side of things. The other thing that surprised me is how little Magic is graded. Only 14,000 Magic cards have been graded in the first 4 months of the year at PSA. That just surprised me. I know, I have saved searches for some beta cards specifically. Now that's, super rare, but those don't pop up very often. And for whatever reason, the base of collectors of Magic just never gravitated towards graded cards. It's just a weird thing, the two dynamics when you look at Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. Both are very successful TCGs. Both have long histories. And on the Pokemon side, we are seeing a lot of people collect the cards and not even play the game. And they want them slabbed up and they want them in their collection. On the Magic side of things, you don't see that at all. They very rarely grade ultra modern Magic. You rarely, you'll see them, but it just doesn't pop up that often. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't really know what the basis of it is. I guess just Magic is more of a player-based game, and Pokemon is more of a collector-based game. So that's kind of the high level with PSA. Let's look at CGC. They grade a lot of TCG. They are coming in at 631,000. So a little less than half of what PSA is doing. Same thing on the market share, pretty even. 86% on Pokemon, very similar to PSA. One Piece coming in at 2%, a lot less on that side. Everything evens out to those 1 or 2%ers of all the other TCGs out there. So Pokemon is the dominant force. They're not really gaining any steam in one particular product niche or another. Now, what gets interesting here is CGC has a pristine grade. So what is their percentage of pristines that they're handed out on something like Dragon Ball and One Piece? Dragon Ball is coming in with a 43% pristine rate. That's not even Gem. Gem Mint 10 is 30%. You have a better chance at getting a pristine on a Dragon Ball Z TCG card than you do a Gem Mint 10. One Piece, almost a 50-50 split. 40% on a Gem Mint 10, 36% on pristine. So you can see the chase for that stuff is actually fairly legitimate. That you could make a run at getting a pristine and have a decent success rate at it, at least on those two sets. Pokemon, for example, comes in at about 10%. So they are out there. You can get them. I've gotten CGC 10 pristines before on Topps Now cards and also a couple of Marvel cards as well. Let's look at Beckett. This, to me, the two most interesting things in this whole little experiment that I had him run was what you see with Beckett and something very particular you see with SGC. Let's look at Beckett's numbers. Graded 122,000. Doesn't even stand close to the numbers that PSA and even CGC are putting out, but still fairly respectable. Let's look at their market share breakdown. This is where things get intriguing. 46% Pokemon. That is way lower than everybody else. It was 80% on PSA and CGC roughly. So you're talking almost about a 35% drop in market share on Pokemon. But One Piece, 28%. Followed by Dragon Ball at 9%, next to no Lorcana. Small percentage of Magic. So they have carved out a niche in some of the non-Pokemon stuff. And here's the reason why. The chase for the Black Label and the Pristine 10 on some of these TCGs is very real. Let's go down here and look at One Piece, for example. These are the One Piece numbers here. You have a 45% gem rate, all right? So if you submit a card, assuming it's not completely destroyed, you have a 45% chance of it getting a BGS 9.5. You have a 41% chance at a Pristine 10 and an 8% chance at a Black Label. You are more likely to get a Pristine or a Black Label than a Gem Mint 10 on One Piece. Dragon Ball, very similar. 35% BGS 9.5 rate, 43% Pristine 10, and a 9% Black Label rate. Absolutely wild. Pokemon, for example, 35% on a 9.5s, 11% on Pristine 10s, 2% on Black Labels. But once again, keep in mind, you're talking about a wide range of Pokemon eras getting submitted for grading. So the thing that I found interesting here was the fact that they are carving out a niche in One Piece, and it seems to be driven around the 10 Pristine and the 10 Black Label. Now, the final piece of the puzzle, SGC's numbers. I've dabbled with hitting around at this in the past in regards to what the hell has happened to the SGC Gold label. Where has it gone? You hardly ever see them. They are nearly impossible to get. But we've looked at One Piece and Dragon Ball Z. The PSA gem rates are off the charts. The CGC Pristine rate, you got almost a 50-50 chance at a Gem Mint versus a Pristine. Beckett, you have a 10% chance, roughly 8 to 9% chance at a Black Label. and a decent shot, real decent shot at least a pristine 10. So you have to imagine that SGC Gold labels are plentiful, or at least achievable. And I've seen comments before on this when Peter raised the price on SGC pricing a couple weeks ago. Some of the comments on the Instagram post were like, hey, no problem here. Absolutely love chasing the gold label. You're crazy. Look at the actual numbers. Here's SGC. They graded 60,000 in TCG. Obviously the lowest. They've still been gaining market share in the TCG space. But even that being said, you would assume, given the rates that the other companies are handing out on this stuff, that SGCs would be up there. Let's look at their market share first. 89% Pokemon, 2% pretty much everything else, 4% Lorcana. They actually have a little niche that they're grinding out in Lorcana. It's their second most graded TCG. Beckett was hardly getting any at all. So for whatever reason, SGC has got a little something going on with Lorcana there. Let's look at gem rates. Dragon Ball. Remember Dragon Ball? It was 45% a BGS 9.5, 40% a pristine, and like 9% a black label, give or take, somewhere around there. SGC, they've handed out 2 pristine 10s. That's it. Comes in, it's a fractional percentage point. It's not even a full percentage point. One Piece. Now, One Piece has an 89% gem rate. So they're doing pretty good gemming it. They have handed out 0 gold labels. Now, some of this could be sample size. They've only graded 962 One Piece cards in the first 4 months of the year. So it's not a huge number. For comparison's sake, let's go back and look at Beckett. Beckett has graded 34,000. So 34x the amount. But they've handed out 2,600 black labels and 14,000 pristine 10s. So you would think in a 1,000 card sample size, if they were on par with Beckett, you'd get 1. You would get 1. But they got none. Even with, you could tell that the product must be very well made because look at that gem percentage. 89% in a 10. So just be careful out there if you think you're legitimately going to get a gold label. In all TCG, 60,000 cards graded for the first 4 months of the year, they handed out 15 gold labels. 11 of those were Pokemon, 2 were Dragon Ball, and 2 were Disney. And that's not Lorcana. That's a different Disney TCG. Like it's or the Kakao or something. It's not Lorcana though. So those are my big takeaways. Gold labels are ghosts. The chase for black label and pristine 10 is absolutely real in the TCG side of things, and it is driving business, especially with One Piece. I don't know much about One Piece at all. I know that it's an anime. I know that it's very popular. I know booster boxes are insane, and singles are even crazier on some of the stuff. The black label is driving submissions for Beckett in that case, and the pristine 10. It's interesting. The other little minor takeaway, I find it intriguing that Lorcana, it's not much, but that it's SGC's second most graded TCG. I find that a little interesting. But curious for your thoughts and comments down below. I just, I enjoy kind of poking around these grading numbers sometimes, kind of seeing what's going where and why. And there is definitely a clear, the One Piece market specifically has their eyes set on chasing black labels. Now, PSA obviously dominates their PSA, but of the second tier graders, at least in One Piece, which is an up and coming TCG, Beckett seems to be carving out a little bit of a niche. Also, if they can print TCG cards this good, why can't they print sports cards this good? Makes you wonder. Makes you think they almost do it on purpose to keep the pop counts even, as crazy as they get. to somehow rein them in. You know, if everything's a pristine 10, then nothing's a pristine 10, if that makes sense. That's all I got. Curious for your thoughts and comments, as always, down below. Something a little bit different, kind of focusing on the TCG side of things today. But I just kind of found the data interesting on the grading side of things. We will catch you boys and girls on the next one. Peace.